I see ancient queens in my dreams. They swim in the milk of Neptune. I am invited, but I am afraid to die. I am not ready to leave you. Unconditional Oshun encouraged. Drink more water. Stern Thoth urged. Write. Brick wall blocks the view. Sole purpose, human potential. Settling kills, creativity, stifling soul betrayers, donning masks of mates and twins. How do I break through? What do you do when words don't do the work? Self-love can't always be the answer, can it? You frustrate me, and I love you anyway. Family depresses me anyway. I am manic anyway. Expectations deceive anyway. Therapy calls anyway, because you don't call anyway. Just once I'd like to be a tree or a bird, a tiger or a rose. They may perish faster, but how much more simple their lives. I wish the anger would subside. Sometimes I wish I could hide from every human on this earth without trapping myself in a box, ignoring my worth. When rage gets the best of me, guilt lingers longer than shouting. How I wish people would share their thoughts with me when I actually want to know them. I don't drink to get drunk. Okay, who doesn't drink to get drunk? I just don't like to rush it, albeit I have, many times. Like inhaling smoke or learning a lover, the key is taking your time. So while I drink this wine, as slow and as fast as I can, I cheers to you, my friendly demons. You could be so much worse, so I'll be grateful and get a bit cozy with you. You. Energy, impeccable, vibe, intoxicating, eyes, kind, lips, sensual, hands, steady, arms, strong, soul, sensational, love, deep, demeanor, godly. My words are heavy, 10 tons of honey on a slow drip into your heartbeat. In this land of make-believe and one of many, many earths, I wonder what we are like on the other planets and planes. I wonder who I am there, if I am still loving you. Perhaps you are my favorite tree. Perhaps you are my favorite spot on the beach. Perhaps we are a pair of bees buzzing in sweet-smelling peonies. For you are the storm in my seas, the fire in the breeze. You are the light of the moon that guided me home, where I found the love I thought missing. Where the sun rose the very same day you went away, and I saw myself divine and illuminated. Godly energy, impeccable vibe, intoxicating eyes, kind lips, sensual hands, steady arms, strong soul, sensational love, deep demeanor. Maybe we aren't meant to be, but sometimes, so badly, I wish you were meant for me. Where is the one who lights me up, builds me up, inspires me to reach for the stars, loves me to every dimension and back, who believes in my vision and sees all that I strive to be and am, without ego, without concern of what I can provide for them only? Next chapter is called No Narcissists Allowed. Do you see the fire in my heart and mind? I am more than beauty and body. I am a lotus, thriving beyond the mud. I soaked up the lessons from the agua. I applied them to my leaves. I am ready for flowers to bloom from my branches. I am ready to be loved the way I deserve and desire. I set my sights high. Perhaps I have manifested all that I want as it awaits my arrival on the other side of acceptance and deserving. I am worthy. I am love. I love you wherever you are. Begging to commit to myself, it is the beginning of committing to you. I find home in the serpent, in the sacred space within, where I shed worn skin. I know where I've been, I know where I'm going, I know who I am, and I know how I unravel and coil. No longer your mirror, I step into my sea of sweetness and serenity. Buried deep all along, I finally heed the call. I went to hell and back today. They wanted me to stay. I thought I'd rip you from my flesh so I could stray without worries of what you'd say. I can get dark that way. Thought about ending it all today so you could finally understand it can't all go your way. I spray lavender into my hand to smell some beauty to clear the air so I can remember why I'm here, for so much more than to be stuck in your revolving door of blame and guilt. You've knit a fantastic quilt. Tonight I cut myself out again. I thought we'd been through this, but I cut myself out again. Soul doesn't lie to me. Ego tries to quite often. I try so hard to see where you were right at the expense of my sanity. Cut the cords today. I have to let it be. There is no changing you. You refuse to see me. So with love, I set you free. Sometimes I'd rather dwell in the fantasy of you, however dangerous it may be, than recount memories of men I've actually met. Questioning sanity, I find queer comfort in the sound of your soul thrumming to mine, knowing you are mine whenever I like. I leisurely make happen what I am patiently impatient for, your eyes. To meet mine, not on a sea of gold and red, no flashing lights overhead. Your eyes will meet mine in a darkness we dive into. Hearts will glow, dim embers will pulse, words will be shared over wine, and for you, cigarettes. I'll tell you how much I don't like them, and you'll acknowledge it's too late for you. I'll say, it's never too late, and you'll smile whether you agree or not. My glow will bring you back to life. You have much to teach me, and I will teach you back. When I felt nostalgic bliss roll slowly up my spine, reach through ribs and seize my heart, unshakable romance, suddenly in love, as if I was someone else loving me, and I knew it was whole. I knew it was mine. You just happened to be the echo of me feeling magic all my own. Forgiveness feels good. One thing doesn't change, my willingness to be vulnerable. I am the wealthiest I have ever been, and it has nothing to do with material. Devastation eroded programming. I rebuild consciously. Every lover has seen my lows. They haven't all seen the same. When I tell you newfound self-love is coming in waves, baptism of past, present, malleable future, infuse the salt water I bathe in. Intention creates action, awareness creates change, experience creates range. I am grateful for it all. Hello, my soul babies, and welcome to Satin Soulbits, the podcast on sex, wellness, and womanhood. Today we have a special guest, and her name is Krista, the spiritual siren. Hello, my love.
Morning.
I know I keep saying that, even though it's not morning when people are going to be listening to this, probably for everyone, but It's morning for me, and yeah. So, spiritual siren Krista is an intuitive who uses her gift to support the Awakening Collective. She has a YouTube channel, which everything you can find her by is spiritual siren. She does monthly tarot readings and energy updates. Her work is centered around radical truth and self-awareness. And she's also a writer of poetry, and she has a book out, so you should go buy it.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to say that I do not endorse things I don't believe in. I just don't like to do that at all, obviously. I don't think most people do. And Krista's the real deal. I watch her on YouTube every month with her updates. Actually, I don't watch every month. I watch when I'm called to, which I would advise for anyone doing anything like that. But every time I watch, it feels like a personal reading. So thank you, Krista, for doing all that, because it's amazing. You. I haven't watched April's yet, but I just remembered this morning, I was like, oh, I have to watch it, because actually sometimes I catch them in the middle of the month, which I think is better, because then I don't anticipate things. I like have a little bit of, I've been like living enough to so that when I go watch it, I'm like, okay, yeah, this makes sense and this works.
Well, like you said, like I think that people are kind of getting called to check in at different times. So exactly. That's actually why I'm changing the way that the readings are going to flow out, but we'll save that for another time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure everything you do is going to be awesome, because I love it. And yeah, they're like the best of, I think, of anybody that I've watched those kinds of things with, you have consistently been on point with me. So you're my go-to. I also like other people, but in addition, and sometimes I'd watch multiple ones, but yeah, you're my fave. So just a little plug there for everybody. I was not paid to do that. I mean it. So today we're talking about, well, probably a lot of things, because Krista and I love to talk, but we're talking about sex as energy exchange, empathy, and all kinds of other good stuff that we'll get into. So yeah, Krista, what's on your mind today? I know empathy has been coming up for you a lot, so I don't know if you wanted to start there. Yeah,
I feel like, the most important aspect of empathy is to have it for yourself and have it for also like your former self. I think a lot of us as we transform and, just age too. Yeah. Because I feel like as you start to like crest into the 30s or, later 30s, you're like, wow, like so much time has passed.
It changes everything. Right. I swear, when I turned 28, I woke up and was like, whoa, life's different. It was like, yeah. And I didn't expect that. I thought that it would feel like any other year because every other year before that had felt like any other year.
No, I think it hits us somewhere between 26 and 30, depending. And it can hit you multiple times in that window. Yeah. But it's necessary, and I think it's better than what they told us it was going to be. So
yeah. Oh, I said this before on another episode, but I knew my 30s would be so much better than my 20s, and I can already see that.
For sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Anyone that's thinking otherwise is definitely off, and they need to come to the party.
Right.
They need to come to the party.
Yeah, well, I guess it ties into like media and stuff of everyone being obsessed with being young, but 30's still young, and I feel like we're just much more put together. We know more of life.
Yeah, but I also think that some of us, like, I feel like I'm aging backwards. Because what's fun is like knowing that you can like handle all the fun that you want to have too. Like, because what we did for fun when we were younger, we lacked foresight and wisdom of like what that was going to entail. Like even if there's not immediate consequences for what you do, there could be long-term consequences.
Absolutely.
And I know I look back on what I used to think was fun. This is actually like an issue that I'm going through now is I don't know what I find fun anymore.
Yeah.
And like I'm not that I don't have, joy
for sure.
and excitement in my life, but fun is something that's, usually you're like, oh, what do you do for fun?
Right,
people ask each other that question all casually, but I don't think a lot of people genuinely know. Some people do. Probably fire signs. I'm sure fire signs know what they do for fun. But
yeah, right.
Some of us don't. Some of us lack the heat.
My first thought was Sagittarius because they are.
Yeah. Sagittarius always know how to have fun.
Havers.
And they could also say like, I go to a random coffee shop and read a book, and they would be genuinely serious about them having fun about that.
Right.
But every Leo's in the gym or being admired somewhere. But
traveling.
Just kidding. I love Leos.
Well, I have a Sagittarius friend, and their favorite thing to do is go travel and go see different bands and basically go to raves and do hella psychedelic drugs. So that sounds like the epitome of Sagittarius to me.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know, like, I love to travel. Traveling is fun to me, but bringing fun and excitement and pleasure, right? If we want to bring it back to sex into your day-to-day life is important. Especially for our generation and for those of us who walk a spiritual path, because this is kind of the idea that like, you're spiritual in every moment, you're present in every moment, and you have the right to like bring ritual or bring excitement or joy or freedom into every moment of your life because we're living in the now. Right. And that's why like, oh yeah, I love travel, but I can't up and have that immediately.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have to know what we can really reach inside of ourselves and bring out for ourselves to enjoy the present.
Definitely.
And I think that's sometimes why people, obviously we all love sex, right? And sex is fantastic, but it's not, and there's masturbation, but really it includes another person. So it's a pleasure that a lot of us seek, a state of euphoria that a lot of us seek that we can't grant ourselves, which makes it so interesting and also hard to rely on. And I feel like that's why sex also is like what a lot of us crave the most, because it adds a different element of excitement and like a question mark. Like, you know, you're going to enjoy yourself, or you hope so, but there's like this, maybe this will happen. Maybe I'll get here. Maybe I'll get there. So
and it's an escape
like a
of
rush.
sorts.
Right. Well, anything that involves another person, I think automatically lends to escape more than things that you do that yourself, because you can automatically, you don't have to sit with your feelings or your emotions or whatever is coming up. You can automatically share it with the other person.
Yeah, that is so true.
Like, I was just thinking about that the other day. Like, I got really upset about something, and I could tell that I did not want to sit with it at all. I had no desire to sit with it. And I automatically like picked up my phone, and I knew the person that I reached out to was not going to give me everything I wanted in that moment. But I also knew that it was because I needed to sit with it.
Yeah. And that ties back. I love that you brought that up, because it ties back into having empathy for yourself. Because,
right.
And I don't know what came up for you, but
and your former self.
Yes, like stuff that comes up for me is all stuff from my former self, and I've been dealing with that. I've been processing a lot of past things that I'm like so just tired of thinking of and want to just kind of eradicate out of my life. So, or at least transmute them so that they're not in my consciousness anymore that way. And it is not fun to sit with. That is for sure.
No, and a lot of that is because there's like different levels to letting go of things. Like, anything that you experience, whether you like it or not, on some level, it's always going to be a part of you, because it left something on you, you know, it changed you. But the story, the actual like third dimensional story of how that, you know, that mark on, you know, on your being like occurred at some point no longer has any bearing on the change that it made on you, because you knew what to do with that experience, you know? And I think that's really where the empathy part comes in, because if you sit here and like pull apart every undesirable or traumatic third dimensional experience that you had and keep that story alive instead of just embodying over time what it taught you, because it takes time depending on what it is, you know, they're two different feelings at the end of the day. Because you can have empathy for yourself if you're like, you know what, I love who I am today. So that's all that matters, because obviously, like, everything that has molded me, you know, has made me someone I'm now proud of, that I feel good about. But if you keep those third dimensional experiences alive and relate and give the power to like, oh, I'm this way because that happened, or I went through this, like, that will work for a period of time, but it'll start to feel too heavy.
Absolutely. And I just had to take notes on what you were just saying, because that was brilliant how you put that, really embodying the lessons, because that's exactly what I've been doing. I've been doing the reliving and the keeping that alive, and it's not good, because life changes and people change, and the stories, it's not that they don't matter. Exactly. And it's not that the stories don't matter. It's just that it's time to, like, I do think of Mariam Hasnayak, because she always talks about, you know, if you keep talking about it, you know, you're still going to keep that energy around. So it ties exactly into what you're saying. Because that was, from her, was the first time I ever saw that concept written anywhere. And yeah, I think I've been like dwelling too much in that, and it's like, no, like you can experience what you experienced and learn your lessons and move on, and not, you know, shun it away. Like, it is still part of you, but embody the lesson. I love that.
But it definitely takes time. So that's where the empathy comes in. Give yourself that empathy, because you'll feel it in your body. And that kind of goes to one of the things that you and I had discussed before, was being hyper aware of your body and your physical vessel. A lot of us, especially those of us that are really sensitive or hyper aware of other people's emotions or our own, at some point or another, like, learned how to either numb out your physical vessel through substances or distractions or whatever, or you just eject from your body or whatever. But once you start to like become really present in the now, you have no choice but to really be in your body.
Yes.
And my favorite spiritual teachers believe that, like, this whole idea of like being in the fifth dimension or whatever, the idea is coming back to the body. Like, it doesn't matter what level of spiritual attainment or awareness you have, if you can't bring it down back to the third dimension and ground it in your body, because we're here on Earth.
Exactly.
Like, this is where we are.
Exactly.
Whether we like it or not, we're here. So you have to use it.
You're meant to be in the body because you're in it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here.
And that's why we're sitting here talking about sex, because without a body, we wouldn't be able to have sex.
Real.
You know? And that's why sex is a very spiritual experience, but it's also a very physical human experience.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, and most pleasures are, if you think about it, because, you know, food, like, you know, if we're talking about Venusian things, right? Venus rules pleasure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, on some level, Mars is definitely obviously is a sex planet, but Venus is really about pleasure. So I would say that intimacy is Venus.
Yes.
And sex on a human, more ego level is Mars.
I like that.
So we like to be, you know, not as humans. I think that we do like the Venusian aspects of sex more than the like human ones. We just don't always like differentiate it or know why we crave which. This is kind of can be like at some point in your life, right? You just want to have sex because you're like, I need to just have a release, right?
Yeah.
You don't even care about where it comes from or whatever. But I think that evolves. I think that evolves into that more desire for intimacy. And I think those of us that are really spiritually aware, we don't crave sex, we crave intimacy.
Definitely.
And they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Obviously, we've all had experiences where they're not.
Yeah.
And we can also, but I think also learning intimacy without sex is something that a lot of us struggle with, because as a society, we're never shown a lot of examples of what that looks like.
Right.
To be intimate with yourself, to be intimate with other people, and have no sexual connotation.
Well, exactly, because I personally define intimacy as being open, and like you and I having this conversation right now, to me, because we're being open in this sacred space, to me that's intimacy. So I know that there's, you know, of course there's physical intimacy, but to me there's having that emotional openness. To me that's more intimate, and sharing those kinds of things.
Right. And you have to, but also to really share that level of intimacy, to like tie it all back in, you have to be present in your body.
Yes.
And you have to be, because once you feel comfortable and safe, safe is a key word here, like in your body and in the immediate moment, because a lot of us, that's why a lot of us, and this is something that I definitely struggle with and a lot of other people do, like if you have a tendency to be anxious mentally, or to just like project yourself forward mentally, that robs you of being in the immediate moment as well. And that will also be a tactic to rob you of getting open and intimate with people. And it can even be like, oh, you and I are being intimate right now, but 5 minutes from now, like I could have an experience where I try to shield that.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's fluid. It's fluid. And then there's something, or you and I can have an intimate conversation all day, but then I try to have one with somebody else and it doesn't, I don't feel that I can.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes that becomes frustrating. Right. Sometimes that becomes frustrating as well, which is why empathy should always be the umbrella, like over everything, because life is a spectrum, everyone thinks that you can transcend duality, but I just think that the expanded awareness, the people that have the more expanded awareness, just make living in duality a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's always going to be something on the opposite end of whatever your spectrum is.
Sure, exactly. And sometimes
okay.
you can feel that duality like within 5 minutes, and it's just
when you're going to embody a lesson, or when you're going to embody like the duality of something, or the difference in different feelings. Once you become more aware of your vessel and you're grounded, you can actually feel the difference of experiences when you talk about them in your body.
Yes. And that's so important, because I'm still learning, but when I first started learning, I realized, and I don't think I've ever put this to words, but I realized that I did not feel present in my body, and that I was not in tune to the messages my body was sending me. Because now that I've worked on so much, and I really, it took me some chakra work. I really had to work on my solar plexus and my root. And now I feel like sacral is a theme, kind of collectively. But when I started to work on those two, I felt so much more present in my body that I could literally feel when I was uncomfortable, or when something was coming up, or, I know it's clear, everyone says this, but your body really talks to you. And I think that everyone,
it does.
And it is about being present and intimate with yourself. Intimate in a way, yes, we can be physically intimate with ourselves, and that's a powerful thing, but also being honest with yourself empathize with yourself, and then having that open connection to yourself so that you can recognize those things, because things will come up all the time. I mean, when I lived in New York, my skin got so bad, and because I've always had acne issues since like 8th grade. And in high school, it was pretty bad, or like, the beginning of high school was pretty bad. And then it settled down, and I did all the medicinal stuff, because at that point I'd had no idea of anything with spirituality. That started when I was like 16, but when my acne started, I wasn't thinking about anything like that. So everything I did was very Western medicine. Like I did stupid Accutane and all that crap that I don't recommend. But in New York, this is about 10 years later, after my acne settled down, that my face blew up in an even worse way than it ever had in my life. I mean, I had such bad, it was like, I didn't even want to leave the house. And at some point I was calling out of work, and they were asking me what was up. And when they were so sweet about it, because one of my bosses had experienced acne in a similar way, but my body was talking to me. I mean, I was like stressed, but it was like, yo, you need to get out of New York. You need to stop doing what you're doing, because it's not working. Like everything in every aspect of my life was not working. And so I think after that was when I actually, and look how long it took me, but it wasn't until then that I really started to pay attention to the things my body was telling me.
Yeah. And there's so many ways it can present itself. Like, I think that at some level we just start to gain a really like a grip on how our emotions present themselves too. Because like, that's not the same for everybody. And we're always going to have some sort of blind spot too. Like, we have to give ourselves patience with that, because there's going to be certain things that you come across in your healing journey as well that are like super easy to move through.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It comes up and you nail the lesson on round one. And then there's always going to be some stuff that like the lesson is meant to be drawn out as well, because I feel like that's another thing. Like, we always talk about cycles, right? And how you got to get out of the cycle, and like you're repeating a karmic pattern and all this stuff. And I feel like on some level, at some point, if you continue to like hold that belief really close, like that if you keep meeting a challenge that like you just can't seem to break through, that like you're missing the message, or you're not hearing, whatever it is. And maybe it's just one of those things that has to play out over an extended period of time, because what you need to learn is that big. Yeah. Because I think people forget too, the bigger the block, the bigger the like strength and stuff that you have to build up inside of yourself. Am I talking about enduring something that's like outright intrusive onto your whole entire existence? No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like things that just subtly repeat themselves over and over. And you're like, damn, like, what is it that I can't get through, this area of my life? Like, you're not suffering, but you're like, damn, what is it? And it's like, well, to break our hardest, patterns, or to heal our biggest wounds, like, it takes a longer mending time.
Yes, definitely.
And that's okay.
Yep.
Because as long as it keeps getting more and more nuanced and subtle, that is a indicator that you are healing. And I want people to remember that.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me too, because that really resonates, and I'm like literally in the middle of that right now, and it can be really painful sometimes, but
that's huge. That's something I probably noticed like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Yeah. That you never, like, we all have core wounds. All of us have our own core wounds, and we have there's collective wounds too, but I would say, let's say, you have like 4 core wounds. You're going to keep meeting different versions of that wound in a more nuanced, subtle manner, because one, you've already gone past the like really traumatic, chaotic, right? You're talking about your acne and stuff. At first, we need huge, big indicators to get us to turn inward, because we are so distracted. Yes. But as you refine your discernment, as you refine your ability to listen to yourself and pay attention to your reality, and you're grounded and you're present, so it doesn't take you a month for your spirit guide to get your attention. It takes a day.
Exactly.
So you're going to continue to go through things, and also the lessons. I feel like the biggest wounds, the lessons become very almost like transparent, where it's like, you're learning something a little different, but it lays itself on like so thin.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the only way I know how to describe it. Like because there's certain things that we all have, they're all unique to us, that we learn in a very slow pattern, like that has to heal over years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like radical shifts do happen. We all have those tower moments and we break free and something huge manifests in its place. And that's great. But there's always going to be one area that each of us have something that takes years to really overcome. And then for a lot of us, that's usually some type of intimacy trauma or, love trauma that rooted from somewhere. Mm. I feel like those ones are the ones that take the longest.
What about family? Because I feel like family is probably the one.
Family. Well, family, I mean, is your first example of love.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
So in a lot of ways, our parental, whatever that means for you and how your household was when you were growing up, your parental trauma is like line one.
Yeah.
It's like baseline.
Yeah.
If you don't want to count whatever you meant, whatever you incarnated with, right?
Yeah.
Aside from that, because, we're not reading anyone's Akashic record right now, so we don't know what's going on. But whatever.
I've been wanting to do that.
Yeah, I've been wanting to teach myself. I know I could.
Yeah. You definitely could.
#lazy.
Yeah. On the to-do list.
Just bring it to me in a dream, because I have vivid dreams. I'm like, just bring it in a dream.
But you're right. The family experience is the baseline, and it does impact how we move in romantic relationships.
Absolutely. And like, again, at first, you're going to see those mommy issues or those daddy issues plain as day.
Yeah.
Like, okay, your dad wasn't supportive, so you went for the bad boy, right? Listen, I used to love me, a bad boy, something serious. Serious.
Been there.
To the point it was like extremely detrimental to my well-being.
Absolutely.
Right? And then it becomes like, oh, well, this guy like used to be pretty bad. He's chill now, so it's fine. But then still something goes awry, right? So then, and then the next one, it's like, okay, not from that kind of household or upbringing, like, is more of a stand-up person in society, but something else is kind of off. You know what I mean? Because everything, you have to unpack those patterns over time. But I will say, if we're talking about family, this is not the case for everybody, because obviously, parents are different for everyone. We all have our own scenarios. But I find that if you have a relationship with your parent on some level, and you start to do a lot of personal healing work that either is around your relationship with them on purpose or not, I feel like it gives way to that generational healing that does need to occur. And even if your parents don't have the awareness to admit that like they're changing, verbally, they will start to ease up and start to heal on themselves. I've seen it with my parents, which was pretty miraculous.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I've seen it happen for other people, but it happens, again, everybody, it's different. But I think that, again, we have to all remember, when we heal ourselves, we heal our generational line, especially with parent wounds and family wounds, or as women, like womb trauma, you carry it from your line of maternal connection. So don't worry, like when you heal yourself, you heal everybody else too, which just makes everything a little easier.
Yeah.
So there's that too.
That just reminded me, I saw on Instagram, Jessica Lanyadoo posted a video of this plant putting out roots. And, I mean, I'm sure people have seen, in other spaces, but I just picked it up. But it was like these roots were growing also outward. And that just popped in my head when you were saying that, because, your energy reaches out. So it doesn't, even if you're not, going to meditation with your mother or something, if you're doing those things internally, it reaches out to our roots, I think. And so that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, my mom, she's very Aries, bless her heart. She, when we lived together and I became like, more of a spiritual being, she was excited for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
But she really wasn't interested at all in like applying it to herself. And when I would try to like, shed awareness on something for her, we'd still get in an argument like I was a teenager again.
Yeah.
And then where she moved in North Carolina, she lives like 10 minutes from this amazing psychic who I've gone to. And she like has her own pendulum now.
Oh,
and
that's
like
beautiful.
has been on like a biomat and all this other stuff, which cracks me up. Cracks me up, man.
Yeah.
Like sometimes she'll text me and she'll be like, Can you check your pendulum for me? I don't trust mine right now.
Aww.
I'm like, Mom, I'm dead. Like, get out of here.
That's awesome. I have a pendulum that I haven't used. It was gifted to me when I was 16, and I would kind of play with it.
Ooh, don't be scared. I love a pendulum.
Yeah. No, they're great. I do the same thing as your mom. I never trust them. I'm like, I think it's just me moving it. I'm like,
No, heck no. I feel like if you want to communicate directly with your higher self or your spirit guides and you don't want to, because oracle cards not as much, but like tarot, like it's so easy for you to project what you think it is onto tarot, and there's also a lot of subjects. There's also a lot of subjects that we experience as individual people that like I don't think need the nuance of tarot. And like I love my pendulum for, again, things that affect my physical vessel. Okay. Because like I personally don't feel it's responsible to pull like cards on like health or your physical well-being or something like that. And like the pendulum's great for like finding your car keys and whatnot, like silly little things like that.
Yeah. I need to get back.
Stuff.
I need to exercise and practice it. It's literally been years. It's been like packed away in my parents' garage, and I just found it, so it's kind of cool.
You just play with it. You don't have to like take it super serious at first.
Yeah. I'll do something.
So I have to say, I've been secretly like playing with my deck while we're talking.
I heard you shuffling, and I got excited.
I didn't know if we could pick it up. So the Knight of Pentacles like keeps stalking us, like even though other cards keep showing up around us, and that's why I can't stress enough. Like the Knight of Pentacles is a slowpoke. Do not get me wrong; he is a slowpoke. He's super concerned about everything.
That sounds like me.
That he can see, right? Just everything. Yeah. But that just goes back to like I can't stress enough that like healing, especially healing that needs to take place in the physical plane, like, and I would say that anything that's sexual in nature has an element of healing on the physical plane. Yeah. Because it's our body, and again, we can't have sex out of body, like, you know, I mean, we're not going to get into astral sex or whatever, but that's not my forte.
Mine either.
It's a very physical act, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like people need to also give themselves grace when it comes from like, especially if you used to view sex very differently or in whatever way, like maybe you were raised in a very religious household, and even though you don't subscribe to those beliefs anymore, you still have guilt attached to having sex, right? Or feeling pleasure, right? Because there's so many levels. Like, and I know for me, my big one was sex and intimacy never were correlated. Right. I was always a sexual person, but I was not in touch with my emotional body at all. Because when I was a kid, I viewed how intense my emotions were as something that was like a burden to the people in my household. Yeah. So I shut down shop early, and I was like, I can't do this. You know what I mean? So all my sexual experiences when I was younger were very much devoid of affection and intimacy. And it's taken me a long time, not only through picking better partners or things like that, but also being okay with who I am. Yes. And whatever that means. Yeah. It takes time, and I feel like anything like when the Knight of Pentacles presents itself, it's really trying to say like, it's okay to take your time, because if you're being this meticulous as well, it's for good reason. Now, sometimes we can get in our head and take way too long, you know what I mean, to do something. Yeah. But I feel like in this case, because we're talking about two very opposite forces, again, that yearning desire to have a physical experience with also the opposite end of the spectrum being that deep, burning desire for intimacy that is euphoric. It takes time to blend those. And it takes a very, like, really soul-touching type of other person to have that with. So I feel like some people, maybe that's listening right now or have been on a spiritual journey for a while, are, like, wondering why they still haven't quite met a person that, like, makes sex like a completely spiritual experience, no matter how like spiritual they are. or even how spiritual their partner is.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that level of escalation takes a lot of time, like, because it's just like to merge both of those, to have, you know, the heavens, if you will, like on earth, like that's not something that just comes down overnight.
Right.
So you got to give yourself that time. And remember too, that it's not so much about you're not choosing the right person or whatever. And it's more about you're still learning how to really feel your divinity in your body.
Yes.
Because there's also a lot of religious, like programming that may be in your body, even though you weren't raised that way this lifetime, that says that they're separate, right? The Catholic Church had nuns forever. Like women who were divine were not sexualized, with the exception of like, you know, some Greek goddesses and whatnot. They were depicted more like naked and everything, but they weren't, after the fall of like that stuff, all structured religion was like, you know, sexuality and whatnot was not one with that power. And I think that's too, because if we're going to talk about the awakening divine feminine and women becoming more aware of how powerful they are, there can also be a fear that like if you tap into that power fully, like if you are a like, you know, amazing in bed type of like vibe, plus psychic, like plus artistic and like all that stuff, like that's a next level amount of power that a lot of women innately are going to feel shame for having.
Yes. And
because we also know that we could crush men to dust with that kind of power. Like we don't need them. That means we're going to go back to the days where women birth children without even having sex, right? We tap into that level of power. So, and that goes back to you saying that it's sacral chakra energy right now, and I totally agree.
Yeah. I've been seeing that everywhere, and you just reminded me. Actually, that is partly why I wrote this book, because and for those who are listening but maybe don't know if this podcast is related, this is I have a book coming out in August called Mouth Made of Satin. It is a collection of erotic poetry. Not all of it is sexual, but it is, I think, inherently erotic, because I think that goes beyond sex itself. And it definitely touches on some spiritual elements, and I talk about a lot of goddess archetypes and I mentioned like Medusa and things like that, because I was just really kind of coming into that feminine energy, because I think that I had this realization a couple years ago that I have been very masculine my entire life energetically. And it took me a lot of work to feel comfortable being in my feminine energy. And that is one of the reasons I am currently so in love with my partner now, is because I feel safe to be in my feminine energy, in my feminine power, without any repercussions, because they're so open and loving and accepting of all of that. And they love it. You know, it's like, I'm not shamed for it. I'm not criticized for anything. Like, I've had past partners who are judgmental, so judgmental, even in the bedroom, even, you know, for things that many people wouldn't judge or anything, you know, it's like pretty basic stuff. But part of why I wrote this book was to embody that and heal that, so that I could embrace it comfortably. And I was inspired by a Reiki practitioner that I've worked with before. Her name is Shannon Loyola. And I don't know if you know who that is, but she's based, I don't think she's based in New York anymore, but she used to be. And I did some Reiki healing with her. And when she does that with you, she kind of goes, if she sees it, she'll express some past life stuff to you. And for me, it was really bad. Like, it was like I was so shamed into, or like I wasn't able to have kids or something. Something happened. I have it written down. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I was a doula of some sort, where I was helping other women. And when I couldn't do it myself, I got really angry. And she said specifically that I got angry with God, and I am not that kind of religious person in this life. And so that reminded me when you said, you know, it could be religion from a past life, because that, and she told me, she's like, get really comfortable with sexuality, like, be, you know, like, do whatever you need to do, but like embrace that. And so, because I think that for a long time I was very passive. I wasn't comfortable having any agency. I was exposed to sex at a young age in not the most positive way, I think. just, between porn and like whatever else. And I think that, that probably is a lot of people. So if not most of us, I feel like everyone's kind of exposed to porn at too young of an age, especially our generation was growing up in the internet and it was kind of like really easily, I mean, it's probably still easily accessible. I don't know. I don't really pay attention to it anymore, but I'm sure it's just as easy, if not easier now. But yeah, so I feel like I just had a lot of I'm still kind of figuring out how to put it into words, I guess, but I feel like I just had a weird relationship with sex, like not a good one, where it was just, it existed and I didn't have any thoughtful approach to it. It was just kind of there and something you did, and some people I'd like and some people I didn't, and that's it. And I don't,
Yeah, sex for me was always related to power. And control. I mean, I'm a Scorpio moon through and through, baby.
Ooh, yeah.
So that's why sex and intimacy didn't connect.
Yeah, and I'm a double Gemini, so I always felt very light, like I wasn't really involved. I've kind of felt disassociated, and I didn't know if it was because of all that air.
I could see that, yeah.
But it was like I would have a hard time even like being present. And I think that also connects to just being present in your body in general.
Well, yeah, and that's what I mean. There's a million different reasons why we could not feel safe in our body and choose to eject. Because when you feel something that just seems uncomfortable to you for whatever reason, we can either eject or we can numb out our body. Like I always chose to numb my body. I'm not really I'm not an actual let me send my etherical essence out of my physical vessel. I'm like, okay, I could drink it away, I could smoke it away, I could party it away, I could eat it away. So, because I still want pleasure, I just don't want to have to feel the feeling attached to it. That's was always the difference for me. Like I was still here to be, to have pleasure, but I experienced it in a way that allowed me to be robbed of the actual emotional content or the energetic content coming with the experience. And that's a different form of escapism, but we all have that, you know what I mean? We all have something that we do that I think kind of diverges our experiences. And once you start really living in the now, I think that's also why things start to feel so intense. Whether it be our healing process or sex or revelations or whatever it is that we're experiencing, because when you're here fully and you get present with yourself, that's also why you start to get triggered a lot and stuff, because you just never realized that certain things bothered you until you actually started to care. I've had to come to grips with the fact that I take a lot of shit personally. I don't project onto people for the most part. And I know, right? I know logically in my head and from spiritual wisdom that, what people do or how they react to you has nothing to do with you. Right. It's them. But I always I innately take things personally.
Me too.
I'm like, what did I do? So we all have that. So again, going back to nuance, before I would project it. I'd be like, oh my God, I have an outward emotional outburst because you did this. Right. And now it's I'll just sit with it. And I'm like, okay, I feel some type of way right now. What am I going to do?
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I got stuck on what you were talking about. You said shame and pleasure, because I feel like I've been learning recently to allow myself to receive. I mean, I say recently, but for the last couple of years, in different aspects of allowing myself to receive. And I think, in terms of sex, that, sometimes it is hard to, and this has to be, between past life and generational and maybe collective. I don't know if this is a running theme for women at all, in general, but allowing myself to receive pleasure and not without guilt or not without feeling like I have to reciprocate, in that moment or anything like that. That's something that's been coming up because it's, and it's interesting to me because I'm trying to figure, I guess if I was going to say, why do we feel this shame in receiving or feeling pleasure? And I feel like, the answer could be obvious, but I also feel like it's not, because in my mind, I'm like, why is this a thing at all? But I know.
Yeah. Well, I think that women, men have their own way of, feeling like what they do in the physical world bears on their worth, right? But women do as well. And I think women, it's more around you have to either look a certain way to feel like worthy of something, or you have to achieve a certain amount of something. For women, I think it's always different depending on like, you know, their upbringing and whatnot. Men, it's primarily like, I need to achieve XYZ in the external world to feel worthy of this, right? That's more a masculine energy
being
type
the
of
provider.
Thing. Right. And they primarily, a man's core wound, like we're being super general, is going to be a root chakra stuff. It's going to be like survival mechanisms, blah, blah, blah. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely people that have more of an upper chakra thing, but I don't think it's as common energetically. For women, though, I think looks and stuff like that goes into a lot of it.
Yeah.
And women, again, like you said, in your past life, you weren't able to bear children, but you helped all these other women bear children.
Yeah.
And that, obviously, in that period of time, if you weren't able to bear children, you probably were basically considered like a freak or like not worth anything. You probably never got married. You know, no one married you, so you probably had to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So you're having a belief that, so you may be unable to receive, especially in a sexual manner, because innately you're like, why would I receive this pleasure when I can't bear the fruit of this, right? Because sex originally was for procreation.
Right. And it's funny because I always joke that childbirth terrifies me. And
yeah, because you might have died before in childbirth.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny, I was there when my little brother was born, and my mom always laughs at me, but I don't, you know, she doesn't think about it the way we're going to think about it when I say it, but I was so freaked out by it. And I was like 11, and I was like, I like buried myself in a chair. I was like, I can't be here. Like, why am I here? Like, this is insane. And, you know, it doesn't bother me now. That aspect of childbirth doesn't bother me at all. I could be around somebody having a kid and I'd be like, cool. But the thought of physically giving birth myself or being pregnant, it still kind of freaks me out a little bit. Physically, not emotionally. I feel like I could be a mom easily. But the physical aspect of it is daunting to me.
And I've had a past life regression before, so I was shown one of my past lives, and it showed my biggest trauma, like wound around receiving love. And basically, like I was from like a more wealthy family, and I believe I had a little brother, and he died. Wow. So my father like didn't like that I was their only child and I was a girl, because still you're supposed to carry on the family name. Right. I didn't like that I came from status, so I used to like go into town and like kind of wear disguises so that I could be with like regular people. Mm-hmm. And I got pregnant by like he wasn't a pirate, but he like always traveled on ships. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I'll stay here with you, like we'll do this together. And I was like, no, I can't take you from your life. Wow. And then he died at sea. So I never saw him again, and my family exiled me, and I ended up like dying in like a little like, you know, house in the woods with like my child, who at that time was like, you know, like more of an adult or a teenager. So
holy shit.
My thing is, yeah, I know. So I've realized that my fear of like intimacy or like loving someone like fully or whatever is, I feel like it's always going to come with some kind of loss. But what it was showing me in the dream was that when I don't ask for what I want, because he offered to stay, I end up losing even more. Wow. You know, because it's like, fine, I lose my family, but I have my, you know, the love of my life or whatever. Yeah. Instead, I lost both. Oof. Because I wouldn't ask for what I wanted.
Yeah, that's heavy.
So, I think a lot of us feel we don't want to be a burden. Mm-hmm. I know for me, I've always on some level had a lot of trauma around my emotions being too much or too intense. They're definitely too intense for me a lot of days. So I know that somewhere along the lines, I know that somewhere along the lines I was being extra, and like my parents were probably like, you need to like rein in, like for whatever reason. So I'm always afraid to like share everything I feel with somebody, because I feel like it's going to like suffocate them, or it's going to push them away.
But logically, you know that's not true.
Right. But to feel, again, anything with emotions, you have to feel safe. Yeah. Or anything with your body, absolutely. Right?
Yes. That's actually been coming up. Safe. That's been coming up a lot in other episodes, that being safe, feeling safe is like the number one priority for us to be, you know, to be and live and receive and all of that.
And I just think sex just goes to a different level, because we want to like pull it back in. I think sex changes once you let sex and intimacy live together as a union. Like once you've unified them and you realize you can't have one without the other, that's when I think your relationship with sex and your body and all that kind of stuff really changes. 'Cause like I said, I used to be able to easily have sex without intimacy. And it's not that I didn't feel safe in my feelings, but I felt fine giving my body to people. Right. Like, so that's the kind of dissociation that I used to do, because my thing was just like, well, I'd rather have casual sex because I know I'm not going to feel anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like I'm not going to have to decide what does this mean to me and like all this other shit.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like,
I was going to say my casual sex experiences, I feel like were based on me just, and I think I've said this before in another one. It was like, oh, well, I don't know. I feel like, I mean, maybe this is really common and probably is, but I feel like it was just me being like, oh, well, they're interested in me, so whatever, I'll just let it happen or whatever. Or like playing around with the idea, even if I didn't really like them, which is, I would never, ever recommend that ever.
Yeah, there's that too. That's definitely.
And I think that goes to worth. Excuse me, that connects to worth or self-worth, you know, and how we feel.
Right, because that's kind of like settling.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know, because really, what is that? That's like really a pity fuck. Like, you did him a favor.
Right.
Like, I've definitely had a pity fuck before. Like, okay, like, you're kind of all over me. I'm a little bit devoid of attention right now. Fuck it. Like, I'm going to do you a favor and I'm going to get mine. And that's when I went back to before, I was saying, like, I used to use sex more for power. After I was, like, heartbroken, like, when I was, like, much younger, like, my first big heartbreak, like, it felt easier to just, like, immediately just jump and go try to, like, I don't know, like sleep with people that like, you know, you wouldn't call them again or whatever. Cause it's like, well, I'm making the decisions now. Like I'm in the driver's seat. Obviously that's extremely foolish and that's not how that works.
Right. And I you know, it's funny cause after my first, go finish first.
No, I'm saying, but like, you know, it's better than being extremely sad and having to sit with like how traumatized you are. Like, you know what I mean? Like obviously I can't even remember what I even felt when I first got heartbroken. If I like I can't even take myself back there. That's how either closed off it still is, or like how much I was just out of my body during all that trauma. Because even if you're present, like, okay, you're having a conversation, if you've learned how to dissociate from your feeling body, because right, if you want to talk about subtle bodies, we have our physical body and our, you know, etheric body, whatever. If you've like tuned out your feeling body completely, like, you can exist through a lot of terrible trauma before it registers. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? And people forget that too. And that's why it takes so long to heal our biggest core wounds. And that's going to be a little different for everybody. But I definitely think it always correlates with feeling safe in your body, feeling safe, feeling whatever emotions come up while you're in your body and while you're present in a moment. And that automatically, I think, all of those healing endeavors, whether they include sexual encounters or not, will in turn change your relationship with sex and whatever sex that you deal with too on a romantic and physical level.
This has been everything. This whole conversation has been so jam packed with wisdom and experience. Like, I love it. There's so much. Like, if I were a listener and I wasn't part of this conversation, I'd be taking notes the whole time. I'd have been like, damn, she is going in. Right, yeah, no, it's good. That's great.